Heating. He teaches at the seminary here in St. Louis, but also has got a tremendous faith story and faith journey along the way. And next year, I know it's a little bit early, but we're talking March 14th of 26, July 18th of 2026, and October 10th of 2026. Those are our three for next year. So Gary's already got those laid out. Introduce our speaker. I was listening to a sports talk radio station several months ago, and I heard Jim being interviewed, and I was like, oh my gosh, the story of this gentleman is just amazing. A local product with Oakville High School. He was an all-standout all-state goalie or soccer goalie for Oakville High School. Played professionally, had a successful business career after he got done with his soccer career, sports marketing and sporting goods distribution. He knows some of the biggest names in sports like Mark McGuire, Ozzie Smith, Ken Griffey Jr. He's had relationships with a lot of people that are really high up in the sports world. But that said, that kind of pales in comparison to the story that he's going to tell this morning about some of the physical challenges he had. He's had a couple of heart transplants. He's had cancer. He's just had a lot of challenges above and beyond, the traditional, business and career-wise. So he's here this morning to share those challenges, how they shaped his life, how they shaped his friendships, and most importantly, how they shaped his faith. Just welcome Jim Tietjens.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I kind of like to stroll around the stage a little bit, but as Brian said, my name is Jim Tietjens. Just celebrated my 65th birthday in February of this year. July 2nd, I celebrated my first day of my 34th year living with a different heart in my body. So I'm going to tell you a little bit today about myself, my family. I don't like to really speak a lot about myself directly, so what I'm going to try to do today is really tell you about all the people that have been in my life that have allowed me to be here today. And there's a lot of them. Two of them are right back at our table. Mike McCartney, a friend of mine since really first grade. We grew up on the same street. His house was the sports house. He had three brothers. His dad was unbelievable, as was his mom. And we just tore the hell out of that house, In the backyard, one sport after another, ice hockey on the patio. So I have so many people like that in my life, and I really give them all the credit as to why I'm here today. So I wrote this book called Saves. And you see it, I was a professional athlete, professional soccer player. I was a goalkeeper. So you think saves, goalie on the front, must be about soccer. And it is a bit, but really what saves mean is it means about all the people in my life that have been there for me to get me where I am today. And I kind of think that when you look back and you look at my life, there is so many pieces to the puzzle. It's a big, sort of long, somewhat complicated puzzle. And the pieces really started to be made when I was a child. So I'll try to kind of add tidbits of my life in between. But my father died when he was 32 years old. At the time, I was 22 months old. My father died from a hereditary heart illness that he received from his mother. Nowadays, it's called idiopathic cardiomyopathy. So I grew up without a father. I went to St. Margaret Mary Alaco in South County, went there for 8 years. And really, when I look back at it now, I kind of see how God was bringing so many people into my life at that young age to sort of carry me on this journey that a lot of people would say, Jim's had a hard life, Jim's had a hard time. As I look back at my age now, I kind of think that I've had a blessed life. I've had a charmed life. And I've had that because all the people that have been part of my puzzle. So in St. Margaret Mary Alaco for 8 years, At that time, Father Joe Shear was our priest. I was an altar boy. I played soccer from grades 1 through 8. I worked at the school as a janitor from 4th grade on because Father Shear hired kids in the school, 4th graders, 5th graders, 6th graders, and so on. So in that part of my life, Father Shear became a role model. Didn't really have one, right? But he became a role model. Also, during those 8 years of grade school, I played soccer. My soccer coach was named Jerry Fitzgerald, passed away a few years ago. Mr. Fitz took our team from grades 1 through 8, right? His son is my age, so he followed us grades 1 through 8. So in that time, again, not a lot of role models in my life. Mr. Fitz was a role model. Those friends that I formed in grade school, I still have friendships with today. You know, those are very important people in my life and important people in my story. As my story goes on, because as I look back, I really think, again, that was the foundation being built of what I was to face throughout my life. The one thing I do give myself a little bit of credit for, that I felt I was always very wise to choose the right friends. Choose the right friends that were brought up by very good parents, and these friends of mine had very good core values. Probably 95% of them were Catholics. All right, so lost my father, as I said, and I was 22 months old. My grandmother I never knew, she died young. In 1989, my sister Karen was 32 years old and she became ill. At that point, she was in the Navy. And if you remember, 32 was the year my father died. So Karen actually became ill in 31. And she later passed on in 1989. She was 32 years old, the same age as my father was. So I'm thinking at that time, okay, Dad passed, Karen passed. More than likely, it's going to get rough for me. In my years, backing up a little bit from St. Margaret, and I'm just kind of throwing that in so you can kind of follow the family story. All right, so then I went on from St. Margaret Mary, who I had great friends. Mike McCartney was a friend at grade school, and he's been a friend ever since. So now I go to high school, right? And I play high school soccer at Oakville, all right? And probably 85% on the kids on the team were from St. Francis of Assisi, St. Margaret Mary. Queen of All Saints really wasn't developed at that time, but they were Catholic guys, Catholic boys, again, from great families, great parents, and guys I became very close with at the time, playing high school soccer. And I consider every one of them today a brother. We like to say that we were teammates back then, but we're brothers today. And those are people that are so important in my journey because they've given me so much love and support. So when you think, you know, again, some would say, hey, Jim's had a rough life, right? He's had a rough life. But again, when you look back at it and the puzzle grows and the life becomes more complicated, there's more people in my life to support me. Because the one thing you really realize when you go through these challenges, that there's no way you can do it again. So, you know, just some comments I'll make is, you know, I've never had a vision of God, Jesus. I've never seen them, right? But I see every day the people he's put in my life to be there to carry me through these hard times. So yes, my sister passed away, as I said. She was 32. I went on from high school to play soccer at St. Louis University, played there for 2 years, turned professional soccer at that time, played for 5 years in Fort Lauderdale, and had a lot of fun, right? Was pretty healthy, but had a lot of fun. Again, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking eventually something's going to come because it happened to my sister at 32. So when my career ended, I came back to St. Louis. I was able to get a job at Rawlings Sporting Goods, which I loved, but I was back home with my friends. And again, these are my high school ones. And, Bill Coletta, Don Barczewski, Gary Eula, Kurt Billmeyer, who was supposed to be here today. And as I got sick for the first time, it wasn't a surprise for me. I was ready for it. I was prepared for it. And I'd actually planned ahead of time for it. So when it happened, I really was not shocked, and I really was not so concerned, because I knew that I had, again, people coming into my life that were amazing, not just my grade school friends, not just my high school friends, but now all of a sudden, this group of people that I met from Barnes Hospital, all right, they came into my life. They showed me how much they loved me, how much they cared for me. I was a young guy. They gave me the feeling they were not going to let me down, okay? My dream was to be a husband and a father, and I was able to achieve that. I was able to become a husband when I was 32 years old, which ironically, if you remember the number 32, was the same year that my sister died and the same year that my father died. So as I started getting sick in the fall of 1991, and I went for the first time to the doctor's office. I met with a doctor by the name of Greg Robeson at Barnes Hospital. He's now at St. Luke's. He was a young gun. He was one of the young gurus out of college, out of med school, 32 at the time, like I was. He was one of the guys you wanted to be around, all right? I saw him for the first time on I believe it was a Tuesday. I saw him in his office. He put a Holter monitor on my body. I returned the Holter monitor to the office because I began getting weak from my heart, having irregular heartbeat episodes. I returned it to him late Thursday, all right? Again, this is years ago, so the tech isn't as high as it is today. They began to read that monitor on Friday afternoon to see what the results were. And the results showed that I had a lot of episodes of heartbeats that were called ventricular tachycardia heartbeats. Those are the type of beats that can kill you instantly. And I would have episodes of 1,200, 2,000 consecutive beats. Remember, he read that on a Friday. I was at a rehearsal dinner Friday night at St. Luke's University at the couple's house. And he read the results and said, we got to find this guy right now. We got to get this guy into the hospital right now. He remembered that my fiance was roommates with another girl that happened to be friends with his nurse. So his nurse actually got a hold of my fiance's roommate to find out where I was. They found on the refrigerator a rehearsal dinner invitation, showed where the location was. He sent the police to the rehearsal dinner looking for me. So it's 10 o'clock at night, the rehearsal dinner's breaking up, and I'm in the lobby by myself at that time, getting my overcoat on. And a policeman walks in the lobby. And as soon as he walked into that lobby, it was just us two, he looked at me, and I knew immediately he was looking for me. And he said, I'm looking for Jim Tietjens, and had a piece of paper in his hand. And I said, that would be me, very calmly. I just wasn't surprised. And he said, you need to call this number right away. It was my doctor. I called him, and he said, you need to get to the hospital right now. They're ready for you. Get down there. So in a matter of minutes, I'm on my way to the hospital. You know, a little bit interesting. More people coming into the lobby. What's going on? Well, Jim's been called to the hospital. Well, within 20 minutes, I'm at the hospital, and the whole wedding rehearsal people are all down at the hospital. They put me immediately into ICU. So again, you know, people say, Jim's had a hard life. Again, that was my angel, Greg Robeson. You know, I've been friends with him ever since. Those are the people that God has put in my life to really save me, as we talk about saves, is to make sure that I'm still in this world today. Why? I'm not quite sure. But now you take my grade school friends, you take my high school friends, you take my high school soccer coach, who was a very good role model, Jim Boker, and he played for the St. Louis Stars. He coached me for 4 years in high school, right? So another good role model, another good father figure that I didn't have. So again, as I continue to sort of unknowingly build my team for the future to support me, I'm making sure that it's the right team, it's the right people, you know, it's the right chemistry on the team. And I will tell you, you know, I didn't know that I was going to have all these issues that I had and they would continue. But if there was a team member in the hospital that I didn't feel comfortable about on the team, I would raise my hand and said, I don't want to work with this person, you know, for one reason or another. I didn't mean to be mean and cruel to anyone, but, you know, I wanted to have the right people on the team. So I was not shy about that. So now I'm in the hospital. I'm due to get married May 9th of 1992. I'm on the transplant list. And I go on with the wedding May 9th of 1992. I'm actually sitting on a chair there. The doctors felt that it would be more stressful to cancel the wedding than it would be to go on with it. So we went on with the wedding at St. Gabriel's. I think many people have heard of St. Gabriel's. I married the love of my life. I was happy, and that was half my dream that I wanted to be a father. So I had my first transplant, and that is July 2nd of 1992. Most transplants, a lot of transplants take place on a holiday. Why? Because there's a lot of accidents on the highway. That transplant was very successful. I'm able to get out of the hospital in 10 days. I had a healthy heart, a young healthy heart, from a young man that came from Tennessee. I don't know much about him other than the fact that I believe he was killed in a motorcycle accident, right? So kind of start to live life again. I go back to work at Rawlings Sporting Goods. I decided at that time that I was not going to be a heart transplant patient. I was going to be a real person. And all my life in sports, I overachieved. I'm not a great natural athlete. I was a goalkeeper in soccer. I'm 5'11" at best. But I was a student of the game. I prepared. I was willing to prepare, sacrifice, work harder than the next person. I made sure when my recovery began for my heart transplant that I was going to take the same approach. Prepare. Educate yourself. You know, what happens when you do that? You fear less. You know, you fear less. Not preparing is like preparing to fail. Not preparing is like preparing to fail. That's not my line. That's Wayne Gretzky's father's line. So it's really simple. Heard Robert Kraft talk one year when I was with Anheuser-Busch. He said, and made a lot of sense to me, he said during all the Patriots winning season, during the season, the Patriots spend more time in the classroom than they do on the football field. The football field's on Sundays, Mondays, but most of the time they're in the classroom. So when you think about it, right, they're playing a different opponent every day. And I sort of take that same philosophy. What can I learn? You know, how can I give myself a better chance of succeeding? So listen to what the doctor said, and then try to apply more knowledge that I've learned through it. And I've been really successful at that. You know, again, it's not just me, it's all the people around me that have showed me unconditional love through the years, right? This first heart was a good one. I went back to work. Great career at Rawlings Sporting Goods. I love working at Rawlings Sporting Goods. Small St. Louis company, iconic company, almost 150 years old. You know, was able to work with professional athletes like, you know, Ken Griffey Jr., Ozzie Smith, and sort of the list goes on and on. So, you know, again, as I'm going through my life, right, I had a great childhood at St. Margaret Mary, great friends. We won the state championship at soccer in high school, great friends. I love those guys to death today. None of them are here, unfortunately, but the two guys in the back can tell you, we are not teammates now. We're brothers, right? We're brothers. A friend of mine, just a quick story. One of my teammates, Dominic Barczewski, he had a very serious stroke about 5 years ago. He was driving back from Huntsville, Alabama, from vacation with his son and a friend. And they were at a gas station filling the tank, and Dominic had a stroke at the tank. Serious stroke, shouldn't be here today. Well, all the years prior, Dominic was always there for me, always there to support me. Now Dom is deathly ill. You know, he survived the stroke. It just so happened that Huntsville, Alabama, it's the #1 stroke center in Alabama. The hospital's the #1 stroke center. So that was a stroke of luck from Dom. So Dominic went through, he's still going through years of rehab, right? After his stroke, about 2.5 years later, I went with him to Munich with his wife because there was a doctor there that discovered sort of like a new stroke treatment, and Dominic received that treatment. He's not completely healed, but he's probably 85% on a good day, right? So as he supported me, I was able to give that love back to him. And I have to tell you, just being in Munich with him and his wife, I mean, as we all know, right, it's always better to give than receive. And I was the happiest guy on earth when I was in Munich with him. And he got the treatment, and we had a ball, and we laughed. And since he's had that treatment, he's doing much better, right? 2 weeks ago, he actually moved to Chicago 6 months ago to be with his family because his kids are there. Wife retired, he's retired, they're living in Chicago. What happened is the stroke doctors recommended that Dominic see a heart doctor. So I hooked him up with my docs at Barnes. This is over a year ago. And they find out that he has a defect in his heart from birth. And they don't know for 100% certainty, but believe that that defect could have caused his stroke. So they went in and they fixed it. So I hadn't seen Dom for 6 months because they moved to Chicago. He comes in 2 weeks ago on a Friday to see the heart doctor in St. Louis. They fly in. I pick him and his wife up, no luggage. We went to brunch at First Watch. Just so much love shared at that table. And, I'm sure you guys do it now. I mean, it's a great feeling to tell someone that is a brother now how much you love them. It's a great feeling to embrace them and tell them how much you love them. And we both did that. We had a great doctor's visit, back to the airport, boom, they're back home to Chicago. But again, I'm talking about all the pieces and the complicated puzzle. And it is so complicated. But me personally, and the guys in the back will confirm this, I'm just a simple guy. I'm just a simple guy from Oakville. I was brought up in a Catholic family. I went to Catholic church. Always surrounded myself with amazing people. Everything in my life that I've achieved, it has nothing to do with me, all right? So then I go on, first heart transplant, 26 years. So good run for a heart transplant. So then my kidneys start to fail. And my kidneys start to fail because the transplant medication you take over the years wears down your kidneys. They don't really expect transplant guys or ladies to last 25, 35 years, right? So eventually the kidneys are going to fail. And they did. They did begin to fail. All right? And as they began to fail, I started to develop some coronary artery blockage in my arteries, which for transplant recipients is not really related to your diet. It's just something that happens in transplanted arteries. Do we have any doctors in the room by chance? Okay, good. So no one can say, Jim, you don't know what you're talking about. So I was on dialysis for 3 years. It's a hard gig, but again, I continued to work. Dialysis was 3 times a week. I'd go into dialysis at 5 in the morning. I get set up, I get on my recliner, I have my laptop, never missed a beat at Rollins, right? Trying to keep up with my sort of commitment to myself and my family that I am not a patient. So I'd work and never missed a beat, and by this time I'm at Anheuser-Busch, which was a dream of mine. I joined there when I was 40 years old, and I'm working. When I had to travel for Anheuser-Busch, I was able to set up kidney dialysis centers in Cincinnati. I'd go to Cincinnati a lot, call on Kroger, and I would go have dialysis on the road. Again, people A.B. allowing me to do that. Maybe I had to stay an extra night because I couldn't go back home the day I completed dialysis. It's very weak. But again, everyone helping me, everyone supporting me, the people I worked for letting me do that. Always accommodations for Jim. So now I start to, again, I need that new heart and a new kidney. And they decided at the time, my heart wasn't horrible, but I did have 4 or 5 stents in it. And they decided at the time that if they're going to do a kidney transplant, they wanted to give me another heart at the same time, because the chances of long-time survival for a new heart and kidney would be if they're both done together from the same donor. So that happened, and I remember I got the call on a Saturday afternoon, and I was taking a nap. I had dialysis that day. So after dialysis, same day, you're really tired. And I was not in a great mood mentally, right? And I got the call and I said, let me think about it. I'm not sure I want it. I'm like, life is pretty good. I'm working 3 times a week at AB, getting full pay. Not a bad gig, So I called my friends, the Barczewskis, right? Dominic hadn't been out of the house in months because he was scared to go out. His language wasn't great. He didn't want to see people. Within 15 minutes, they were at my house. He was at my house. Jim, get up. Here's your gym bag. Start packing your gym bag. You're going, you're going. So that's the kind of support I've had over the years to really, I've had plenty of down moments. I got divorced in 2019 and, divorced the person I loved the most in my life, right? And was depressed for a long time. Still miss her, right? But my friends stepped up every day. And that's where I say I'm very fortunate to have those friends. So I go in the hospital now for my second transplant. It's a heart kidney. 1 in the morning that night, Saturday, I guess it's the next day. I guess it's Sunday morning. My doctor, who's Palestinian, walks in my room at 1 in the morning, and I got 2 friends in there. One who's not here, his name's Mike Radel. I mean, Mike is an amazing man in himself, right? His daughter had a very, very serious brain tumor, brain cancer. Well, they found a doctor in Germany, and German doctor has developed a vaccine just for his daughter, and she received, I think she's now, 10, 13 years now, Mick? Yeah. So she's being treated by this doctor in Germany, which is a long story because there's a lot of legalities with that. Duke Medical Center has now accepted the treatment and is taking it forward to get it approved in the United States as a regular treatment. It was approved as a, what do you call it, Mick? Yeah, it was approved for him, for his daughter. And actually they deemed her cured. And I always say he deserves a Nobel Prize, but that's beside the point. The point is he's another friend. So he gets in at 1 in the morning, and his doctor walks into my office. He's Palestinian. He looks like, honestly, it's dark in the room. It's late. He looks like he's 21 years old. And my friend Mike just starts grilling him. How old are you? How many surgeries have you done? How many heart kidneys have you done? And Mike's pacing around the room. It's a U because I'm in the middle in the bed. And I finally said, and the doctor's avoiding all these questions. And I said to Mike, I said, stop. I said, you're making me nervous. I said, he hasn't answered you, so obviously this is his first heart kidney. okay? I said, so shut up, you know? And it was his first heart kidney, but Mike wants to know, like we were gonna change the decision that night. Well, Jim, I don't know about this, So finally, but again, that's love. That's the kind of love I've had. Another St. Margaret Mary guy, right? He grew up behind Mike McCartney right back there, all right? Friend for life. His father, I talk about father figures. His father, Mick, very successful businessman in St. Louis, very successful. His father was another role model for me as I was growing up and see how he handled himself in business. So, everyone thinks Jim Tietjens has had a hard life, but honestly, Jim Tietjens has had a ton of people in his life to the point where I've lived a charmed life. And these guys pick me up every time I need them to pick me up. There's a guy here I had invited this morning. He can't be here because he has a serious family issue right now, unfortunately. Serious family issue that's been dealing with for, I don't know how many years, but a lot of years, right? His name's Kurt Billmeyer. Another St. Margaret Mary guy, another Catholic guy, another soccer player, another teammate, another brother, right? Probably the toughest guy on my high school soccer team, probably the toughest guy I've ever been around, right? Not a big guy, but you don't want to get in a tussle with Kurt. So I'm in the hospital after the second heart transplant, and I can't talk because of the breathing piece, and they pulled it out, but they had to put it back in and pull it out. So they're thinking it possibly damaged my lungs. So it's very hard to eat. So I'm in the hospital that night. Kurt, toughest guy, right? He's cutting up chicken parm in tiny pieces, tiny pieces. He's feeding me, right? He's feeding me. And I mean, Kurt would never tell anyone about that. I told people because I cried. Just again, another piece of the puzzle. And remember I said I'm a simple guy. I am. I've never been accused to be in the life of any party. I was the designated driver when I was in high school because I was a year younger. Shut up, Rook. Just get in the driver's seat and drive the car, which I did. I had no problem with that. So again, just kind of the point is, a lot of great people in my life, a lot of great doctors in my life, a lot of great nurses in my life, a lot of great techs in my life. The people that clean the room, I've run into those people at Deerberg's. And I look and I'm like, you don't remember me, do you? And they don't, because I looked horrible in the hospital, right? And I'd introduce myself and tell them who I am and thank them for what they did. And, it's just unbelievable to be alive, okay? I had an instance at Barnes one day where I was in the hospital, cancer, very serious cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4, 10 months of chemo, toughest thing I've ever done in my life, by far. Well, there's 4 chemo medicines that they would inject to me, and one damaged my lungs very bad. In the beginning, they weren't sure what it was and what was causing it, and they didn't know how bad the lungs were damaged, but they knew they were damaged. So long story short, they eventually had to stop that medicine, which they did. But I was in the hospital because it was questioned, it was questionable whether I'd make it or not, whether my lungs would recover. So I was in an isolated room that nobody else could come in. And in those rooms, there's kind of an airlock between the door to the room, and then you go in that airlock area. There's another door, glass door to the room. And there was a construction guy in that airlock area. He was fixing the door. And I looked horrible. I mean, I had a fever, high-grade fever for probably 8 straight days. He opens the door to me and he says, "Is there anything that I can get for you?" And without missing a beat, I said, "How about a chocolate malt?" And within 20 minutes, he was down in the cafeteria, came back up with a chocolate malt. So I go back to that, I've never seen a vision of God or a vision of Jesus, but I truly believe that throughout my entire life, that he's been surrounding me with these people that just lift me out of holes when I need to be lifted out of holes. And that really has given me this feeling of I owe them so much that I just need to keep doing my part of it, right? I'm just a part of the team. I need to do my part. So that sort of is my commitment to my friends, my heart donors, their families. I owe them so much. So I kind of feel like my part's been the easy part. And I made a decision from very early on that I was never going to complain. I always, when I was in grade school and we'd be in Mass, I'd always look, up at the cross and say, okay, well, how much does God love you, right? Well, that's how much he loves you. He was crucified on the cross. And I felt if he could do that, he could take that journey, up the hillside to be hung on the cross, why can't I be strong in my journey? And that's just the way I've looked at it. I'm nothing special. I'm nothing special. So I had my second heart kidney transplant. 36 hours after that transplant, I got a very serious hospital infection called C. diff, and I got pneumonia. And that happened immediately. So C. diff is a hospital-borne infection from all the instruments that were in and out of your body. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know why. I kept drifting in and out of consciousness, but I really didn't know what it was, but I knew something was wrong. My heart surgeon, Dr. Masu, he kept coming in my room daily, and I'd fade in, I'd fade out, and he would say, Jim, your heart and your kidney are doing amazing. Keep fighting. And that's all I heard. I heard that so many times, and I would think to myself, I'm an adult, he's an adult. He can't just be saying that if it wasn't true, right? So I thought that's kind of what I held on to, all right? And that kept me going. Probably between 48 and 72 hours, there was a very dark presence entered my room, very dark. And it was in the form of one doctor who was a little bit heavyset, don't know if he exists or not, had curly hair, had a coat with green printing on it. Barnes printing is blue. It's not green. Don't know where this guy came from. He didn't have horns, anything like that, but in my mind, this guy was evil, and I did not want him in my room. I took my hands and my arms with all my might and tried to push him away, To this day, right now, I remember everything that happened, everything that was said, the words, the tone of the words, and I was scared to death, right? They told me some very bad things to the point when I actually woke up for the first time. Mike, I think you were in the room with Mike, and I asked you questions about, did Julie and Annie go to Florida? Was my stepfather alive? And you answered no, but because there were very real voices. And I don't, some people say, well, you're on a lot of drugs, Jim. Well, yeah, I was, but I remember every word. I don't remember every word of every dream. It's 8 years later, and I still remember every word, and I know it scared the heck out of me, right? So I got mad. Again, there was no vision of God or anything like that. But all of a sudden, the tone all changed in my room. And I got almost physically mad and verbally mad. And I would describe it as, I don't know where I came up with this description because I've never said it before in my life. But my description was, there was something trying to kick down the door to my body and get inside and take over my body. And at a point, I got so mad. Again, I can't say God was in the room, an angel was in the room, but something was in the room that made me upset and I said out loud, I said, you can kick as hard as you want. You're not getting in. And at that point, everything changed. Everything went calm. So, just sharing an experience with you, right? So I got out of the hospital. I recovered. I was in there for 31 days, had to go back to rehab, had an incredible lady who was my physical therapist. She was from Bosnia, and I still see her today. Her kids are grown. They take a lot of family vacations. Her kids are successful. They go to Lindbergh High School. They play soccer. They're in the band. They play basketball. And when I see her today, I mean, I'm just the happiest person in the world because I couldn't walk. You know, I thought I'd get right out of bed the second transplant like I did on the first one. 32 years old, I just got up, went go. I thought I'd do that on this one. Get up, try to get up, couldn't move. So 31 days of rehab, she was there pushing me. We made it. So you know, fast forward a little bit to March of, that transplant was in August of 2018. Fast forward to March the next year, and I'm trying to get a hold of my heart donor's mother. I find out that she's a single mom. He doesn't have a father. Father left at a very young age. He has a son. He's a member of the Missouri Air National Guard, or National Guard, I'm sorry. He's a combat medic. He's a combat medic in the National Guard. His name was Colton. Colton took his own life with PTSD. Very unfortunate. Had a 3-year-old son at the time. Colton was a Christian, very much a Christian, right? Didn't drink, loved chocolate milk. And I really wanted to meet his mom, kind of tell her a little bit about me. And before I had that opportunity, I'd written her several letters. And in the fall of the year before, because it was Christmas time, I thought now's the time to meet her, telling her a little bit about my family. Took a while, months. I finally get a letter back. And in the meantime, right, I'm recovering really well. I think that must be something pretty special because I'm in my late 50s recovering from a second heart transplant and kidney transplant, and I'm doing pretty darn well, right? I must be a pretty special athlete or whatever you want to call it. So I open this letter that I get in the mail, and I'm sitting on my bed, and there's a picture falls out onto the ground right in front of me, facing me, and it's a picture of her son, Colton, in his Army fatigues. He is a picture of health, like 5'8", physically fit, and I just started laughing, saying, you thought it was you, Jim. And I thought, no, it wasn't me. It was him. Unbelievable, unbelievable. But again, you know, blessed with a great first heart, blessed with a great second heart and kidney. I still cannot believe how fast I've recovered at my age at 58 than I did when I was 32. And it's the heart. It's the heart. The heart is amazing. So able to meet the mom, you know, so we set up time to meet the mom, right? And it's a tough meeting because you don't know what to expect when you meet the mom. You know, she's lost her only son, so that never leaves her. That's with her every minute of every day. You know, she doesn't know if I'm going to come in all tatted up and, you know, you never know. I don't know what she's going to be like. So we meet at Mid-America Transplant, which is down where the old, by where the old arena used to be. And I go into kind of a, not a conference room, but a fairly big room where I'm there and she's over there. And I've got to walk across the room to embrace her. And I'm just asking God to please put the right words in my mouth because I have no idea what I'm going to say. And, you know, this lady just lost her only son. So I walk across the room and I embrace her and she embraces me. And I can't even tell you what I said. I can just tell you that whatever came out was right. You know, and those weren't my words, those were God's words, and it was right. And I remember telling her I do remember telling her two things in a very humble way. I said, her name was Cheryl. I said, Cheryl, if you had the opportunity to select Colton's recipient on your own, you would have selected me. And I didn't say that I say that to you guys, and I mean that very humbly. I mean that there is no one that will take better care of Colton's heart than myself, and I have. I mean, I was given a lot, and a lot is expected in return. I will never do anything to tarnish his heart. So again, a very special meeting for me. That anniversary is coming up August 18th, and I usually go down there because she has a little ceremony. She's from Cape Girardeau, so I usually drive down there. She has a little ceremony at the cemetery. So again, there's more people, more people in my life. So when you think of heart transplant in general, and you think of everything that has to go right, and I like to refer to it as the chain of life. So when there's an event where Colton took his own life, the touch points that have to go right to get to the point where the heart is in St. Louis, I mean, there's probably 25 to 30 people in that chain. And if one person doesn't do that job, the whole thing can break down. These are people that don't even know me, right? They've never met me, and yet they're out there for me. So as I recovered in the hospital, and I told you how sick I got, I had a team there every day. Mike Radel, the one who questioned the doctor, Mike was there most of the time in the dark. He had donuts or something sweet for the nurses. Always something sweet for the nurses. Then I had a friend, Gary Ullo. He was there a lot of the day. Gary was kind of hitting on the nurses. And I remember at times, like, I would be in and out of conscious, and I heard Gary say something to a nurse. I looked up, and I said, Gary, give it a break, And then I had Kurt there, right? I had Kurt there. Kurt Billmeyer at night, every day. And then, of course, Mike McCartney was the businessman. He was in every doctor meeting. So every morning, all my doctors and ICU, it's a pretty big meeting. 6, 7 people outside and the nurses. What are we going to do with Jim today? And that was when I was, pneumonia and everything and touch and go. Mike was out there taking notes so he could update everyone. I said, and to this day, I still believe I saw it. One morning, I am certain I saw him with a white coat on with the doctors. He says no, but I mean, I did see it. So, and another friend, I got to tell this story, right? Bill Coletta. Bill's a quiet guy, St. Francis of Assisi, still, one of the group, one of the brothers, one of the guys I love. I never saw him in the hospital. I never saw him come and visit. His son's wife, they just had a baby 2 weeks ago. She lives across the street from me, one house down. Her name's Maria. Maria comes over and we're talking. She said, well, Bill was there to see you. And I said, I don't remember. He said, yeah, you don't remember. You were sleeping the whole time. He said, Bill sat there for 2 hours and held your hand. And, I never knew anything about it. Bill didn't tell me. Funny story about that. One of the bad dreams I had was that I owed someone $50,000. And Bill was in the dream. That dream was in the hospital. He was in the dream. So there must have been something I recognized that tied us together. Growing up, Bill was known as the tightest guy of all of us. Well, maybe not me. I was probably the tightest. But Bill was pretty tight. And I remember in the dream, I looked at Bill and said, hey, Bill, you think you can cover the 50 grand? He said, yeah, Jim, I think I'm good. So when I told that story to him, it made a lot of impact. So anyway, you kind of getting the whole picture, I think, how the pieces come together. The cancer was horrible, horrible. And I've had several of them. I had tumors removed from my neck. I had a tumor removed from under my tongue. I had lots of skin cancers, but kind of the list, I've had 5 or 6 pneumonias that hospitalized me. One was touch and go, where they had to move me from St. Anthony's to Barnes. But again, all these people, not just, my friends, but doctors, nurses, and then the list goes on and on and on. Now I have something that, it's a hard thing I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with a disease. It's called peripheral artery disease, referred to as PAD. There is no solution for PAD, all right? So below the waist, from my waist to my feet, it's lack of blood flow. So your arteries are big enough from your waist to your knees to stent them. They're big enough to do that, all right? But once you get below the knees, the arteries are so narrow that you can't do that, right? You have to go in and try to do a surgery on these narrow arteries. And it's very dangerous, the surgery, because they're so narrow, it's very easy to puncture them. So in the last 4 years, I've had 18 surgeries, 9 on this leg, 9 on, all to open up blood flow, all right? Probably the last month, I've walked without a cane for the first time in 6 months, so it's a good sign. You can see I got one shoe on and a sandal on, and that's because on one of my toe, there's an open wound on one of my toes, and it's been there for 6 months, and it's now got a scab over it, so it's hard scab, but with no blood flow, it's going to take forever to heal. So that's kind of what's going on. It should heal, but you got to be very concerned about infection, because if that spreads and goes up the leg, boom, they have to amputate the leg. So I have a very, very good surgeon at Barnes, kind of used to it. I kind of know the gig that, the pain in my legs are subsided a little bit now. I know how it works. I know what to expect. I had one surgery in April, one surgery in May. And if this scab comes up in the next 6 to 8 weeks, comes off, I'll be in a pretty good spot. I'll be able to put another shoe on. So that's kind of like my story. And again, I kind of hope I think you do, you get the idea is that it's really not about me. I'm just a guy that's been a good patient, trusted and believed in my friends. I was brought up in a Catholic school. I had good role models. I had friends' fathers that were role models. So again, I had the miracle of having 2 kids. I have a son, 30. I have a daughter, 28, right? Son was severe ADHD as a child. Was really worried about where he'd end up. He has a 10-year-old daughter. He's a single father with full custody of the daughter. He's doing okay. He's doing okay. Kind of starting to see in him things that I've taught him. And I got to say that it feels pretty good. It feels pretty good. I'm very proud of how he's being a father. Still trying to teach him. As you guys know, you never stop trying to teach your kids, but maybe in a subtle way. Maybe not banging it in like we did when they were younger. And I'm constantly doing that. My daughter was a cardiac ICU nurse at Barnes. She worked with all the same doctors I work with. She's 28. Her name's Anna. Tough little kid. She played Division I volleyball at Florida State. Tough little girl. Tough. And now she's getting ready to leave for Chicago to go for 3 years to nurse anesthetist school. So just very proud of her. So that was my dream, to realize that I was a father. In my family, there's been 10 people, of which 7 of the 10 has had the bad heart gene. My 2 sisters had it. I had it. My dad had it. My dad's mother had it. Okay? My sister's one daughter has it. Her son has it. 2 for 2 in her family. Her one daughter, my niece, is about 42, has already had 2 heart transplants. 2 heart transplants within 24 months because the first one didn't go well. She has 2 kids. Of her 2 kids, one of the 2 has the bad heart gene. So now we talk about my 2 kids, right? And I'm thinking for certain one of my 2 are going to have the bad heart gene. How can it possibly be, neither of them have it? Well, my daughter gets tested first because she goes to Florida State and plays volleyball, and the NCAA rules are really, really big time in terms of testing for that. She tests negative. Unbelievable. A miracle, right? So I say to God, bring it on. Bring on it, bring on any hurdle, any task, anything you want me to do, any challenge. I'm accepting it. my daughter's healthy, right? A year and a half later, I get my son tested. And I don't hear anything for months. And, one day I'm in the doctor's office and I asked my heart doctor, I'm like, hey, did you ever get those results in for my son? And he's like, you never heard about those? I'm like, no. He's like, well, we told him. I said, I don't know anything. He said, wait a minute, let me walk out of the room. So I'm thinking the worst possible results. So he comes back in the room, and he comes back in the room, he puts his head down like this. And I'm thinking, oh, no. He said, he's negative, like that. And it's like, so this is all sprung up sort of in those years. And it's not fun, but again, I'll carry any cross I'm asked to carry and still feel like I'm the luckiest man around, luckiest man in town. I'm a sinner. I got to improve myself and try to do better every day. And I'm committed to that. Sometimes I slip, but I'm just trying to be a better person every day. And again, I'm very thankful for everyone that's been in my life. Jeff Kuchno is back there. Jeff is my partner on the book. Jeff is a longtime journalist in St. Louis. Met him at the gym, and as we talk about the people that come into your life, I met Jeff in the gym, right? I always wanted to tell this story because I really want to recognize all those that saved me. I really want to recognize my family members that have gone before me and sort of weren't as fortunate with me. I want to recognize what they mean to me and sort of what I'm trying to achieve for my family. And my family, Jim Tietjens, with my son and my daughter, it's gone forever. They don't have it. They can't pass it on. So that means my granddaughter, my son has a 10-year-old daughter. She can't have it. He doesn't have it. He can't pass it on. So we met in the gym, Jeff and myself. Jeff asked me if I've ever, he's a journalist, so he's aware of my name, but, never really knew each other. We could become friends. He asked me about writing a book. I'm like, don't know where to start. He's like, I do. So again, he's come together to express the story. And, that brings me to where I am today, and just really privileged to be here with you guys this morning. There's a lot in the book. It's maybe 70% inspirational, 35% soccer, but it is a good book. And thank you for listening to me. I'll kind of shut up for a few minutes. I know I've probably been talking a long time. Be happy to answer any questions. Now, I'm sure I missed something, so if anyone's wondering about anything, certainly ask me. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate the honesty, really heartfelt. On your doctor.
So I'm a little bit, so the last doctor's visit, they told me that I'm getting a little bit hard of hearing, so. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
I was giving you a compliment. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
all the transparency and everything. That was very
It's an honor to be
heartfelt.
here, honestly.
Yeah, very good. I wanted to ask you on your, I don't know why it sprung out in your discussion, but the Pakistani doctor that it seemed like he was a pretty high impact guy. And did you follow up with what his story was? Was he, were you able to convert him?
I was not, I don't believe he existed. You're talking about the evil-looking doctor?
No. I'm sorry. The doctor that came in and said, hey, your heart is good.
Oh, yeah.
The guy that performed his first heart transplant.
Right. Well, that was he's performed a lot of heart transplants, but that was his first heart-kidney
combo, yeah.
Now, to be honest with you, what happens there is he puts the heart in, and a kidney doctor comes in and puts the kidney in. So in my situation, there was a lot of scar tissue inside my chest. And he had told me ahead of time, he said, Jim, we're probably going to have to keep you open up for a day and a half, and pack you with ice to bring the swelling down. And these guys talk about it like it's nothing. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to be open for a day and a half. Yeah, okay, not a big deal. If that's what needs to be done, let's do it, Doc. But your question related to him was what, actually? I'm sorry.
Were you able to follow up with him and his career or anything?
I follow up with him all the time. So, I brought a book to him, try to get pictures. He's asked me to, I've actually spoke at doctors, big symposiums and meetings. He's had me speak at a meeting before, and, so those guys are my rock stars, right? It's not professional athletes, it's those guys. I like being around them.
And then is he a Christian?
He's a Muslim. Dr. Masu is a Muslim. I haven't delved into that, which I kind of know you'd like to hear that, but I can't really say, but he's a Christian, or he's a Muslim. But he's a good man. He's a good man. How about anybody else? Yes, sir.
First of all, Jim, I want to thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And it's amazing that with your veins in your legs, that you stood up there that long. That's a feat right there. And I think God allowed that to happen. But what I want to share with you is I firmly believe, like you do, that God sends a lot of people in your lives to kind of mold you, shape you, and inspire you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think in your heart, I think you in return need to reveal that to other people.
Yes.
Because maybe you'll plant a seed in another person's heart. But my question to you is this. I know you went through a lot of crosses in your life. And you don't have to give me an answer now, but you told me that you got divorced in 2019 or 18?
2000, well, the divorce was, those were the COVID years, so it took a long time.
Okay.
Divorce was final in 2019. yeah.
Okay. All I want to know, is it because of the crosses that you were dealing with in your life that your wife basically gave up or left you, or was it something else? That's all I want, yes or no?
Well, it didn't have anything to do with unfaithfulness or anything like that.
Okay, so like all your conditions and your health issues and what you were dealing with, your job and all that, that didn't really play a role in that, or did it? Maybe to a degree.
I think that we didn't work hard enough
Okay.
to stay friends, and I think I'm guilty. I think she's guilty. I will say that when I was young and we were in love and I had the first heart transplant, she was amazing, right? She was amazing, and for a long time she was amazing. We both could have done better. I put the blame on, I'm not looking at her, I'm looking at myself. I owed more to her and I owed more to my kids. And some might say, Jim, that's not true, but that's how I feel. I should have done better.
Okay.
And it's the biggest failure of my life, and I've never loved anyone like her, and I will never love anyone again like her.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
We run out of time. I've got one last question. I saw that you brought some books with you today.
Yes, sir.
Are those for sale by any
Yes,
chance?
yes, we've got softbacks and hardbacks. We do cash, Venmo, and credit card. Softbacks are $15, hardbacks are $25. I'll sign the book.
Thank you. And if you still have more questions, I encourage you to,
Yeah, I'll
when you
hang
go back and
around.
get your book signed,
Yeah.
make him pay for it by answering questions.
But, just kind of in closing, I hope the message sort of got out that it's a complicated story from a simple man. And the journey began in first grade. Journey began in first grade, starting building the framework, the foundation of what I was going to need to survive. I believe I've got another 25 years in me. I really do. This heart is amazing. So I believe there'll be one day that I'll be the oldest living transplant person in the world. The other thing I didn't mention, my mom was amazing, amazing. And never had that father figure, but my mom she did it all. She just taught me very simply, not in a rah-rah way, to be brave and be courageous. Jim, when you get knocked down, just get right back up. Not, again, very simple way. And she lived years with 3 kids that she had to raise. And she was without a husband. So her belief in me was enough to give me confidence, and I just remember I'll never not get back up. That's what she taught me. That's what I do. So thank you so much, everyone. And I'll be in the back, so if anyone wants to talk, come talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. All right, so hi, my name's David Whitlock. I'm Gary's son here. We'll be closing at 11:30. We'll have our formal closing